Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by the beautiful Amy Zubieta. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I'm so honored to be here working with you. For those of you that are not familiar with Amy's work, she's an indie film actress starring in the award-winning films Walk Away, as well as Halloween Inferno Part 2. As a stage actor, she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her work in the musical theater production of Jurassic Park, the musical, which that just sounds absolutely phenomenal. I got to tell you that right off the rip.
It's a big old glorious mess of ridiculousness.
It just sounds great. Also, Once Upon a Mattress. But also, recently, how you and I connected, you acted across from Rebecca Hall in The Night House, directed by David Bruckner, which premiered at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival, and very quickly became everybody's favorite horror movie of 2021. It's a horror movie. It's a love story. I'm not going to get spoilery here because obviously it's still so new and I don't want to ruin it for anybody that hasn't seen it. But I will tell you this. He almost loves his wife as much as I love mine. So there's a reason for you to go and see this film. Now, you do have two more feature-length films coming out soon, The Burned Over District and The Abandoned Pit. Now, are you able to talk about these at all without spoilers, obviously, or?
Yeah, I think so.
So a little bit about The Burned Over District. What can you tell us about that?
So that one we're filming in Western New York, so Rochester, Buffalo area, which is known as the Burned Over District because there was a period of time where there were a lot of different cults. And, sometimes when there are cults, lots of weird stuff happens. So this really dives into small town life that happens to have this cult, also happens to have this pit that may or may not be somewhat supernatural, and all the horrific things that can happen when a cult kind of runs the town and their morals and ideals are very, very focused in on one thing that's kind of messed up from any outside viewer.
I can't wait to check that out. And you tell me thriller, you tell me, horror thriller, I'm in no matter what. Well, what about The Abandoned Pit? What can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Abaddon Pit.
Oh,
also,
yeah, see there's my
cult. All good. And honestly, the very basic summary for both of these could almost be identical. Surface level, because they're both thriller, horror, cults involved, and both happen to have a pit, they could be identical, but they're so vastly different in just how the stories play out, the relationships, and really the role of the cult and the pit, and kind of the story arc for the main characters. But my character in that one is vastly different. So in the Burned Over District, the brother and sister, I'm the sister, are the lead characters in that one. And then this one, I'm actually the creature in the pit.
Ooh.
So you get to go in the pit for that one. And it's weird. I just had a Zoom call with our director and the art team working on my costume. And it's going to be, he wants people to see it and walk away thinking that I'm not sure what I just saw. It was weird, good, like something that sticks with you just because it's so either unsettling or so strange. It just took you on a journey you weren't expecting. Like, that's what I want.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this much. If there's a pit where you're the monster, that's a pit I want to be a part of. So the Abaddon Pit is something I'm very excited, looking forward to as well. But you're also in post-production on a web series, Lost and Found. Can you tell us a little bit about Lost and Found? What's going on with that? Do we have any type of expected release for that yet, or?
Yeah, we are well into post-production right now. And actually I have a call tomorrow to finish up editing for the song that I wrote and sang for that one. But during pandemic, me and 3 other actors who met during a class online kind of came together, started shooting around ideas, and came up with an idea for Lost and Found, which is a group of friends from childhood, and we're kind of connected through this Girl Scout group. Stuff happened, they split apart, went their separate ways. The 3 other actors in this live in LA. So part of us figuring out the story was how to loop me in, since I'm on the East Coast. So we decided that, something happens to get the events rolling, to get the friends back together. So like, well, what if my character dies? I send them on a journey via video messages, and I'm kind of the voiceover throughout the storyline that helps them find themselves again and reconnect to each other on this forced adventure in the wilderness. So it's really about, finding yourselves and each other again after, the stuff of life just kind of threw you apart in ways you could never imagine.
Well, I'm so excited for that. And I always give updates on people when they've been guests on the show, but you guys don't have to wait for that, because I have all of Amy's social media links right down here in the description. So make sure you're following her on social media so you can stay up to date on everything that she's doing, not just because she's an actress and a co-writer, co-producer, co-creator, but also because she's a yoga instructor, a singer, a mom, a vegan, a rock climber, also a board game lover, and a huge tea connoisseur. So you can follow all that on social media, as well as all of the acting and writing. Now, I do got to say this. You and me got to get down on some Uno sometime. I don't know if you consider that a board game. If not Uno, I can show you what's up on Chutes and Ladders. It doesn't matter. I'm down for whatever.
I mean, Uno, definitely a card game.
Right.
I just played the other day with my daughter. We have a set of emoji Uno cards, which has extra cards. One where if you put it down, the following card, the next person has to make that face until the next round gets to them. So you have a good time of silly face making and poop emoji. Great.
Right. Now I'm interested. So we know what you got going on in the future. You got many feathers in the cap right now, and we know what you're doing right now. But Amy, the reason we're here, I want to take you back to the past. And, like I said, The Night House is something that exploded onto the scene. It's a great work of art. It's a wonderful movie. It's a love story. There's legit scares in this movie, but horror has to start for all of us somewhere, Amy. And I want to go back to the past and talk about how it started for you, my friend. And Amy, your first horror movie was?
Pet Sematary.
What a scarring way to start your horror life. Huge fan of the movie. Obviously I got the t-shirt on, and we got the little poster back here signed by Gage himself, Miko. So definitely a movie that has stayed with me for a long time. But do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
Probably around 14, 15.
Yeah. And now you're at the age where you're understanding what horror is and how scary life can be. So this isn't one where you watched as a child and a lot of it went over your head. You're fully accepting and digesting everything this movie has to offer. Do you remember who you were with the first time you had seen it?
It was definitely with a group of friends, because that was around the time where we started kind of scary movie nights. And that was definitely the first one. I know my best friend and my roommate was there, because when we first started talking about this, I texted her. I was like, Kara, what was our first scary movie? Because I'm certain whatever it was, we watched together. And we determined that it must have been that. So it was definitely a small group of middle school, high school friends watching scary movies in my parents' basement. Oh, there are too many doors down there also, so it just made it scarier.
Right. And there's a lot of scenes in this movie that are iconic in the horror world that are just, people talk about this movie, they talk about many different scenes, but what would you say the scene was that affected you the most at that time?
Baby with a scalpel under the bed. One, because things that in my mind are very wrong and unnatural that I can't rationalize, I find terrifying. So The fact that a baby has that much dexterity. I know that sounds silly, but can grasp it fully and wield it. And I mean, that's a very thick tendon. That's not easy to cut. So that, because it's so wrong in my mind, makes it even that much scarier.
Right.
I mean,
I just love that you're like,
the darkness and the music.
I love that you're like, look, the baby died and came back. It is what it is. But you're going to tell me it can hold a scalpel? Like, come on, guys. I thought we were being grounded in reality a little here. I love that. And the kid is the cutest little actor, Miko Hughes. Like, he's such the adore. Like, when he slips and falls and hit his head, and he's like, not fair. Not fair, not fair. Like, it's just so adorable. Like, oh, I want to save you so bad, but I know you'll cut my Achilles tendon. And the practical effects on that scene are great. Like, you feel that as it's happening. Like, you feel it in your leg as it's happening. And then you get the mouth slash right afterwards. Like, what a gruesome and terrible scene to watch. So when you think about Pet Sematary, what would you say the first thing that pops into your head is?
I mean, other than like physically feeling on edge and kind of scared, I always get an image that is a mix of this sort of foggy realm and then I guess like the dead baby, like things that are coming back in a wrong way. And then it's sort of shifted around with this. I don't even know if the movie is foggy. I don't really remember, but in my head and when I visualize it, that's what it is. It's like clouded over, like, is this actually real? Because it's also wrong. I know that this could not happen, but maybe because you thought of it. And I mean, when someone suffers a loss like that, weird stuff can happen.
For sure. And what I like about what you just said is, we talk about the child that lost its life in the movie. One scene that gets glossed over sometimes that I don't think a lot of people really think about is when they're at that funeral and the dad and the grandpa are kind of having that argument and they get in a fight and they push and the casket falls, and the casket, when it falls, it rocks, and you see the baby's hand in there as it falls. And then Lewis just really loses his shit and starts yelling and they start fighting. And then they get broke. This is your son's funeral. Like that whole scene, you watch it as an adult. Like, that's what I love about Pet Sematary. Like, you watch this movie as a kid and then you watch it as an adult and you feel two completely different ways. Like, you're a parent. So, you watch it as a kid and you think about how scary it is. And then you watch it as an adult and you think, man, this is actually like a heartbreaking story, watching your kid lose his life. And then what parent wouldn't try to bring their kid back from the abyss if they had the chance? So the different feelings you get when you watch this movie as a child and adult are completely different. But what would you say I know this is a hard thing to say because this movie's full of darkness, but what would you say your favorite scene from Pet Sematary is?
My favorite scene? I don't know if I have any favorite scenes from scary movies, just because I try to block them out so much. Maybe I really hate how it ends. Wait, I don't know if this is how it ends. Maybe this is how it ends. This is where it ends in my head. When the wife comes into the kitchen and she's dead and they still embrace, right? Am I remembering this correctly?
You are.
And I hate it because I mean, we know that she's gone and she's dead and this can't possibly be, but since this is the world that we're now in, she's definitely going to kill him. But he's also sort of resigned and she's there. So it's really awful and ugh.
They hug and kiss. And then she grabs the knife on the table and raises the knife and it cuts to black and you just hear so that it's a wrap for him too. But what a dark ending for this movie.
And you also know that he knew that was going to happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I always ask, and now this is a movie that I think I know the answer, and I hate saying favorite. That's such a dark way to word this, but as we watch scary movies, we also look for the kills. What kill would you say was the one that stuck with you the most in this movie?
Mm. I mean, I guess it wasn't really like a kill, but when baby walks into traffic,
Yeah. You
that's the only
can't.
one where you like it's coming because the trucks are in the background. I'm like, there's no fence there.
Mm-hmm.
Something, something. Oh, why is no one watching? And you can't stop it, but you also
Yep.
can't stop watching it.
That's one of those things where you're like, it's not gonna. There's no way that they're actually gonna kill this kid. Like that's not. Oh my god, they killed the kid. And like you see his little shoe flop in, and then the dad screaming. Like you. Oh my gosh, it starts doing those little flashbacks of like him holding him as a baby while he's screaming over top of it. Like such a powerful scene. Now recently,
the things
this movie,
that make it really real like that are so horrific.
mm-hmm.
Like I can't handle the gore. I will close my eyes when I know something's coming. Like that is a knife. I know it's going to do physical damage. I don't really need to see it. I can imagine it. But something that has that really strong, visceral, emotional connection.
Yeah. See, my wife is definitely the gore hound. I don't do gore either. Like I love horror movies. Don't get me wrong, but I'd rather the fear of the unknown for me is what's more scary. I don't need to see someone getting their arms torn off or throat slit. Let me use my imagination. Go Alfred Hitchcock on me. Let me see a shadow of it and then imagine what it looks like. Just scare me with fear, not with gore. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. So this movie was remade recently in the last couple of years. Did you watch the Pet Sematary remake?
No.
Don't. It's not a bad film. It's just, to me, this is one of those movies that are just it's impossible to live up to what the first one did, and they go more into the novel side of things rather than the film. So there's a lot of differences in this film, and where it really lacks for me is the absence of Victor Pascow. He was such an integral part in the first one to me. And like one of my favorite scenes in cinematic history is after Rachel dies and Lewis is carrying her. He's going to the Pet Cemetery, and Victor's apparition is there, and he's like, "Lewis, don't do it. She's gone." And he's like, "It'll be different this time. She just died a little while ago, so it'll be different." And he walks right through his apparition, and then Victor's just like, "No," like trying to stop him from doing it because the same thing's going to happen. Victor's almost this. We talked about this on his episode, but he's almost the guardian angel of this movie. He's that conscience, that voice of reason of he's constantly trying to stop people from doing what he knows they're going to do, going to the Pet Cemetery, and he just can't stop them because he's on the other side looking in. So that's where that movie really fell flat to me. You had the absence of this amazing character, but we know now, Amy, how horror started for you with Pet Cemetery. But now my little buddy Ghostface here has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Amy? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
My favorite horror movie. So like the movies that I can never watch again because I'm always so scared and try not to replay them in my head and block them out as much as possible.
And here I come to bring them back. Hey, let's talk about some things that scarred you.
I mean, really, really scarred me. Okay, not a favorite. This is more like a side story, but related to horror. So ex-boyfriend of mine, he and his roommate really liked Halloween, as in like the holidays. So they had a lot of like just like weird decorations in their house, including Nightmare Before Christmas, so kind of goofy ones, but then also like actual scary weird stuff all over the place. In the winter he always left for work before me to plow or shovel, and there was one day where I was leaving for work and was running late and stopped in the bathroom that happened to be underneath the stairs. That's where their first floor bathroom was, and so there's the ceiling is inclined, so there's a curtain behind the toilet. I've been here many, many times, but I've never used this bathroom because it's just like the small half bath that's off the living room. And because I know them and all their weird stuff, I'm like, there's something behind that curtain. I'm the only one here. I It's like 7:45. It's dark out because it's winter. I shouldn't. But I want to see what's behind the curtain. My curiosity got the best of me. I pull aside the curtain. It's the fucking clown from It. And then I can't get out the door. So I'm in this tiny enclosed space, like screaming and crying. I bolt out the house so quickly. I definitely called him to my office when I got to work because we were working at the same college and I worked in human resources, and probably threatened to break up with him because of that. It was terrifying. I do not like clowns.
I find that story hilarious. My buddy Pennywise is pretty straight-faced about it, though. He's not as happy with that story. It's so cool, like these things that, like you talk about. You're not the biggest horror fan in the world, and maybe Pet Sematary has something to do with that. Maybe Pennywise the clown from It has something to do with that. But we all remember how horror started for us and how special horror is, and it's one of the most inclusive and ahead of the time genres out there. I mean, back in the 70s, you had your final girls, you know, when girls were mainly, you know, side characters and side plots. You had women that were kicking ass in horror. And then, you know, Night of the Living Dead from 68 totally talks on race and social issues. And horror has always been ahead of its curve and ahead of the time when it comes to that type of thing. So to be able to meet these people that have had that influence, and we just talked about, I was waiting for you to say, I pulled back the curtain and there was a dead girl that looked just like me. I didn't understand it. It was the weirdest thing. But it's these things that stick with us, you know, and horror can be some of the scariest and bloodiest things in the world, but it can also be some of the most beautiful movies that you've ever seen. And some of the people that are in these movies can be some of the most talented and beautiful and kind people that you've ever talked to and ever had the privilege to be around. So my job doing this is one of the easiest things in the world, because I get to talk to people that not only influence me, but give me a grander look on who these people are and being in the genre. And I can't thank you enough for this time you've come and spent with me. This really means a lot to me, and being able to talk to you about horror and, you know, your life and how things are going with you. It's so amazing. And we're at the third act now, guys. The credits are about to roll. So I got to remind you, make sure you're clicking the links down here in the description and following her on social media. Before we go, I have one last question for you, Amy. We always end the podcast with the same question. We're going to go back to Pet Sematary. And what we're going to do now is we're going to rank this on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking it on production, quality, direction, score, nothing like that. We're not being critics. What we're doing now is ranking this movie strictly on how much it affected you on first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being very effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. What would your ranking of Pet Sematary be?
How much it affected me?
Mm-hmm.
4.25.
That's very fair. We're just going to cut the jaw off and include that on there too.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so amazing to, like I said, I grew up in Nowhere Town, Michigan, and my parents owned a video store. So my weekends were full of walking up and down the aisles, looking at cover arts, deciding that was my YouTube. What movie am I going to rent today by looking at the cover arts? And, you know, there was a beautiful lady out there doing the same thing, watching these same horror movies that I was at a young age. And you've been able to take that and run with it and create a career. And it's so amazing to watch you. And I'm so excited to see all the things you have coming up here in the future and watch you continue to grow. Like I said, guys, make sure you're following Amy on all her social media accounts. Amy, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.